Everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for the Columbia Climate School in the Green Mountains information session for summer 2025. As we wait for folks to join our informational session tonight, I can share a little bit about the purpose of today and our agenda. So today we're going to be learning about the Columbia Climate School pre-college summer program for high school students. It's being offered in partnership with Putney Student Travel. My name is Laurel Zimashihi, and I'm the Assistant Director of K-12 and Continuing Education at the Columbia Climate School. And I'm also one of the instructors in the Green Mountains program. So today we are joined on the Columbia side by another instructor. We have Miriam Nielsen, who is a doctoral student at the Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences at Columbia University and NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies. We're also joined by Ananda Gaona, who is a summer 2024 participant who will be sharing about her experiences in the program. We will also be joined today by Governor Peter Shumlin, who is the 81st governor of Vermont from 2011 to 2017, and one of the former co-directors of Putney Student Travel. And on Putney's side, we're also joined by Sylvie Littledale, who is the Putney director of the program. At Putney, she helps manage the applications and the logistics, and so she's going to be sharing a little bit more about that application and scholarship process. So for today's agenda, we're going to provide a brief introduction to the organizations behind this effort, the Columbia Climate School and Putney Student Travel. We're going to provide an in-depth overview of the Columbia Climate School in the Green Mountains program. And we'll also provide a glimpse into a day in the life of the Green Mountains student. And we're going to share some highlights of the experience, as you can see listed below. We're going to conclude about sharing more about program eligibility, the application process, and any next steps that you'd like to take as an applicant. We're going to also leave time for questions at the end, so feel free to put your questions in the Q&A at any time throughout the program, and we'd be happy to answer them. Please note that the chat button is disabled. So the Columbia Climate School is Columbia University School of Interdisciplinary Climate Research. Announced in 2020, the Climate School is the first new school established at the university in 25 years. And our mission is to develop and inspire knowledge-based solutions and educate future leaders for just and prosperous societies on a healthy planet. Columbia University is a global leader in climate and sustainability education and research, and has a long-standing history of earth and environmental science research and education. So our story actually begins at Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory 70 years ago. LDEO is recognized as the #1 scientific institution in the US that's dedicated to earth and environmental sciences, and has really been at the forefront of groundbreaking climate research. The Earth Institute, which was established in 1996, is Columbia University's largest research institution, which brings together over 750 environmental scientists, policy analysts, engineers, and other experts. As a driving force behind much of the programs that are now a part of the Climate School, the Earth Institute was created to address critical challenges at the intersection of sustainability, climate, natural hazards, and the relationship between human society and the environment. The Climate School is committed to offering interdisciplinary climate educational opportunities for graduate, undergraduate, and pre-college students, as we recognize that you all are the next generation of change makers and essential stakeholders in addressing the climate crisis. Our pre-college programs show how earth processes, climate science, and sustainability can really be integrated into any career path that you're interested in pursuing. And a key focus of our pre-college programs is empowering young people to become community leaders. Since meaningful action often begins at a local level, we aim to equip future climate activists with the tools to mobilize their communities and drive lasting change. So through our partnership with Putney Student Travel, we offer this exceptional summer experience that immerses students in hands-on, in-the-field learning led by Columbia Climate School experts. This program provides high schoolers with exclusive access to advanced climate content that is just rarely accessible in the classroom or at this level. And today, as I mentioned, we're honored and joined by Governor Peter Shumlin, the 81st governor of Vermont and the former director of Putney Student Travel. So he's going to join and share a little bit more about Putney Student Travel's history, mission, and goals.
Thank you, Laurel, and I'm honored to be here. The Putney team, I'll just give you a little history of Putney. You can see this gathering here of lots of young people, except for me, who are all dedicated to providing educational, life-changing summers. We've been here for 74 years. If you go to the next slide, we were founded by my parents, George and Kitty Shumlin. My brother and I, after we graduated from Wesleyan and got our educations there, came back to help dedicate ourselves to this organization. We're now directed by my daughters, Olivia and Becca Shumlin, so third generation. But the history with the climate school is really exciting and central to our mission. And if you click to the next slide, when I ran for governor, and I had the privilege of serving, as Laurel mentioned, 3 terms as governor of Vermont. I did not run for a 4th, but I did a lot of work around climate, renewable energy, and energy efficiency. I believed it was going to create jobs. I believed it was critical to our future. And I was watching the climate degradation, the effects of climate change, having been born and raised on the same land right here where this barn is, on a farm here in Putney, Vermont, where I'd lived all my life. I'd seen these changes, and I really became concerned about the future. Having said that, when the Columbia Climate School indicated that they wanted to choose a laboratory to bring the most important people in this struggle, which is middle and high school students, because it's going to affect them the most of the people on this earth, and bring their professors, their vision, their knowledge about climate science, innovation, obviously advocacy, all the issues that we're facing, both challenges and working. They wanted a laboratory where they could actually connect the courses and the amazing professors that they bring with them with progress in the environment where they were living. So we were really excited to collaborate with them. I had been on the board of all of the colleges here in Vermont, obviously University of Vermont as well as state colleges, and we chose Castleton University, which is in a wonderful little rural town tucked into the Green Mountains, very close to our biggest city, Burlington, Vermont, very close to our capital, Montpelier. But the reason that they really were excited about this, and we were so excited about having them, is in my time as governor, and frankly, the governor since, the subsequent governor that followed me, has really focused on renewable energy, solar, wind, and energy efficiency. And the policy of the state of Vermont, whether it's been Republican governors or Democratic governors, has been really central to helping to build a green economy with the notion that it would be cheaper power, cheaper energy, because we import our coal and oil in the old days from we don't produce it here, and that we could develop an energy efficiency system where we used less power than most states. So what we have donated to this cause at Putney and here in the state of Vermont is a laboratory where, as students, in addition to the extraordinary knowledge you're going to get from the Columbia professors that you would never otherwise have access to, a laboratory you can connect the dots between policy, outcomes, and the need to move more quickly. So when I was governor, we became the #1 solar state in America, according to the Union of Concerned Scientists. We increased solar by 11 times, wind by 20 times. We became a model for energy efficiency so that now our energy efficiency system has been adopted by places like Washington, D.C. and other states. And we really became an example of how you make it happen. On this program, you will have access to folks like the Burlington Electric Company, which is the only entirely green electric utility owned by the people of Burlington, our biggest city. And the director of that program was my chief of staff, Daryl Springer, amazing person. And Darren will walk you through sort of how you run a green utility. You'll meet entrepreneurs that have helped to build companies around solar tracking and wind. So the point is, taking the knowledge that you get from the Columbia professors and being able to hit a laboratory where you can actually connect the dots between the need to move and the action that is so necessary, the outcomes. So I'm always delighted to join this program in the summertime. I don't want to take too much time, except to say this is a unique program. I was speaking to a mom yesterday who was interested in one of our programs, And when I asked for her address so that we could send her some information that she wanted, she said, I can't give you my address because I'm from LA and unfortunately we got burned out of our home. So I don't dare give you an address because we don't have a reliable one. Here's my email. And it just hit home as it has so many times, time and time again, storm after storm, fire after fire, tragedy after tragedy, not just in the United States, but everywhere in the world. We are running out of time. And what I say to folks about this program is, if you will make this part of your future, part of your career, part of your education, you will be contributing, in my view, to the greatest challenge faced by humankind in the history of humankind. That's what this program is about. So thank you for joining us. I appreciate your interest. I'm going to click it back to Laurel and the team who know more about the nuts and bolts than I ever will. But I just want to say, call anytime. I love talking about this program. Sylvie's here to help. Laurel is here to help. But this is really where the rubber hits the road. Space is tight, but we'll do everything we can to get you in if you choose to apply. Thanks so much for having me, and I hope I see you this summer in the Columbia Climate School program right here in the absolutely gorgeous state of Vermont, where you'll never find a better place to spend a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Governor Peter. I think that was the message that we really need our young people to hear. I actually was working with a group this morning, and a quote that really resonated with me that connects to what you shared was that we need to encourage our young people to take climate action and advocacy, not as a responsibility, but as an opportunity to create change and lead. I thought that was just really, really powerful. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me.
All right, so a little more about the Columbia Climate School and the Green Mountains program. As Peter shared, it's on a campus. Castleton University has rebranded as Vermont State University, but it's in the same location of Castleton, Vermont. So this is a campus-based program on that university's picturesque 165-acre campus. So the students of the Green Mountains program, they're joined by a like-minded cohort from across the country and the world to learn from each other, to share their perspectives and their learned experiences, to collaborate and gain an understanding of the multifaceted aspects of climate change, and to learn about the individual roles that they can take in climate action and engage in meaningful conversations about taking action in their own communities. So as you heard, Vermont really is the perfect location for us to run this program. As Vermont's been a leader in green energy, it's really been showing us how states and local municipalities can make tangible change on a local level and move the needle in the right direction. And I think we need examples of that now more than ever. In addition, Putney Student Travel is extremely well connected in their home state of Vermont. And so, as you heard, we're going to have access to learning from other practitioners in addition to the Columbia experts that are really going to show you how climate action can be applied in different careers in every sector that you may be interested in pursuing. Students will also get to enjoy the beautiful scenery of the Green Mountains. We're going to have a lot of activities for them to have fun and enjoy being with each other as well. So this is our 5th year in offering this summer program. The dates for this summer are June 29th through July 11th. So it's a 13-day, 12-night program. The fee is $6,890, and that's an all-inclusive fee. It covers accommodation. Students will be living on campus in dorms to really get that pre-college experience, all of the meals, program activities, field excursions and weekend trips, and transportation during the program. So this program, being a pre-college program, is designed for students grades 9th through 12th. We also accept motivated rising 9th grade students. And today we're joined by Ananda, who was a student in last year's summer program. And I would love to hear a little bit more about yourself, the inspiration that you had to join this program, and about the climate action project that you created and kind of the progress you've made and where we're at now.
Hi, Laurel. Hi, Miriam. Hi. Hello to everyone watching. It's truly a pleasure to return, especially to this environment, and help other students kind of get facilitated upon this process, because I know that it'd be a little bit intimidating at first, but I promise you it'll be so worth it. Um, One of the first things that I actually wanted to speak about was um, the way that I became interested in this program. So I've always kind of been a little bit more on that side of things, on that spectrum, especially in middle school. Like I remember donating my money for like nonprofit organizations, my birthday money, and things like that. I was also very inspired by Greta Thunberg's protest, her climate protest, and things like that. However, the more I grew up, the more that I learned about corporate interests, and I was so disappointed by that fact. So I kind of strayed away from it. But then as I grew up, I kind of learned that climate change, like this process, it's an ongoing process. And it really is about just unity and kind of all just kind of all of us uniting to work towards this change instead of doing individual little things. And I know that and because given this, I feel like it's very important to take change from within us, and also on a more structural, like from the government and policy initiatives and things like that. And I think that this program definitely um, uplifted that a lot.
So thank you for sharing that. And I think in what you were sharing, you're also highlighting one of the very important components of this program is that it is very interdisciplinary in its approach to
Exactly.
understanding climate and bringing climate solutions. We're not just focusing on the science, although we all learn about the foundations of the drivers of climate change. And you're going to hear from Miriam today a little bit more about climate modeling, but that solutions really need to be taken in every sector. And so I think your testimony there just really highlighted that, which is great.
Exactly. And then also, along with this, I think that from the program, something that I gained was just exposure to all these aspects, because I feel like usually when you think climate change, you think recycling or save the turtles. But I think that this program really helped me be like exposed to all aspects, like the data science aspect. I know that Miriam was also working on that as well, and there was different professors who had different specialties, and it was something that I was very intrigued by, the fact that there are so many aspects that encompass climate change and climate science.
Yeah, absolutely. Ananda, I'm curious, do you mind sharing, also we kind of jumped right into it before introduction, so apologies, but do you mind sharing what grade you're in and what school you attend and where you're coming from right now?
Yes, I'm actually in school right now.
Oh,
I attend Port of Los Angeles High School. I have my uniform on, and I live in LA. So this was literally like a long ride for me, but it was really nice. And I'm a
thank
senior. Hmm.
And you're a senior.
Yes.
Awesome. And so I would love to hear a little bit more about some of the favorite things that you learned on the program, whether it be a lesson or one of the activities that we did, and then one of your non-academic favorite activities that we did, because I know we had our afternoons to explore Vermont. So I'd love to hear both if that's okay.
For sure. And I think that's the beauty of this program, is that it's so versatile. Like while we are getting that academic enrichment, it's also about connecting socially. I mean, I was definitely exposed to a lot of international students as well, and that was something in itself. But to come back on your question, one of my favorite things that we did was the United Nations mock conference. And I think that I got to represent, I don't know if it was China, I think. And I know that different people were assigned different options. So there was even like any like journalist and just different people holding different assignments. And it was just very interesting having to connect with people or try to negotiate with people who obviously do not have the same resources as you. And that also kind of highlights back onto equity and how you can't expect change from every country in the same way, because they have, some of them lack a foundation, and obviously others have advantages.
Yeah, absolutely. It was one of my favorite activities too. It was so
Mhm.
fun to see you all really get into, like, dig into these roles. And I think it opens our minds to a better understanding of why some of this international change can be slow and challenging, but that there is, this goal of us staying below 1.5 or 2 degrees C. And so how can we work and collaborate together in a coordinated way to
Get
really
there.
affect that change? Yeah.
Because in the end, this is our world. Like, we're all in this together. We can't just separate and have some countries contribute more or less. But yes, along with this, I think one of my favorite non-academic activities was when we went to what was the lake called?
Oh, Lake Bomoseen or Lake George?
George Lake. Yes,
Okay,
yes,
Lake George.
yes.
Yes.
Lake George. Lake George. I think that one was definitely my favorite. I love that we kind of got to just it was just like a very hands-on activity, and the fishing that when we did the thing with the net.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yes, and that was
Oh,
really
amazing.
nice.
And that's so funny because that's actually more of the academic activities that we did. But
Oh, really? Okay. Okay.
um,
Let me think of.
no, it's totally fine. I love that that was something that popped to you because we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but we partnered with the Darren Freshwater Institute on Lake
Mhm,
George to hear from the
mhm.
scientists, and they're doing some studies around climate impacts to their region. So it's a more localized look on what scientists are doing in that area, how it's impacting the lake. And so hearing from some other stakeholders, I think, was just a really great opportunity. And then we did have like a pizza party in the park after, which was
We did.
fun.
Yes.
Ananda, can you share a little bit about your climate action project that was
Mhm.
the final deliverable of this program?
Yes. So I know that when you hear climate action program, I mean, even in the program itself, I kind of felt like a little bit intimidated by this fact that I was like, I have to come up with a plan. I have to create this in such little amount of time. But once you're there, and the cool thing is that you have all the lessons, so you have those 2 weeks to really get all that information going. And from then, that's how you kind of choose what you're really interested in. And it just kind of facilitates the process of choosing what your climate action plan will actually be like. And one of the things that I was most interested in the program was just the lack of equity within the climate talk and the climate discussion. So my climate program was it was this idea where we have different Instagram pages and just like media, just like to communicate and advocate the impacts of climate change, but in a way that it translates to Hispanic communities because I know that Hispanics, at least in California, Hispanics make up the majority of the population. Yet, through research, I found out that they are the least involved in climate efforts. And I think that this was definitely part because because of that language barrier. So a lot of the citizens weren't actually being informed. So I think that that was definitely one of my objectives within the my action plan. And so yes, it kind of just encompassed just social media campaigns. Eventually, because the thing about this plan is that it's just kind of steps, and you don't have to have it all right away. And even the better thing is that you can definitely adjust as you go. But because this plan is more of like an outline, you can definitely like set exactly or certain goals that you'd like to meet. And for me, that was social media campaigns, eventually local organizations either creating them or reaching out to them, school programs, definitely involving more of that climate change talk within the schools, and also eventually further down the line, maybe even like helplines where we directly address these issues. And that was definitely a big part of my program. Um, and yes, and then right as of now, because I'm a senior, it's been a very busy, it's very hectic. But within my school, I run the Hispanic Heritage Club. And when it was Hispanic Heritage Month, September, I kind of delved into that, into the post, and to just kind of promote that idea that we can also be included in this talk.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I love that you highlighted and saw this challenge of education. I mean, we need to start talking more about climate, because the more we're talking about it, the more that we're thinking about it, the more it's going to be raised as a priority to address. And so education is one of the biggest and first things that we need to do in terms of climate action. And so on a local level, recognizing that there's this language barrier and trying to jump over these hurdles so that education is accessible to people in your community, I think is incredible. And I also appreciate you mentioning that the Climate Action Project, in 2 weeks, we're going to help you create a framework, but it's not that the project needs to be completed by the end of the program, right? The goal is for you to have this framework and tangible next steps. So when you get home, you know the next steps to take to make this project a reality. And it does require involving stakeholders. So the fact that you were saying that you want to incorporate these community partnerships is such a key component of the success of a project like this.
Sure.
And so
For sure.
where are you now with your project? Is it, you said with your Hispanic Heritage Club, you've been doing some outreach and messaging?
I've just kind of been doing some posts. Like I know that especially for this club, like I mentioned, because it was Hispanic Heritage Month, I kind of also in the announcements, I've kind of I found a way to just kind of incorporate that into the announcements. Like I'd give in like little fun facts. I'd pop in little fun facts, and slowly but surely, I think that while I haven't directly continued the program or like the plan, I feel like I've definitely tried to incorporate it into other things that are definitely having an impact. Because anything is some sort of impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Ananda will be here. If you have any questions for her, please use the Q&A. But thank you so much for sharing about your experience. I think it really brings the program to life when we get to hear from students that have been a part of it.
Thank you so much, Laura. It's an honor to be here.
All right, so we are going to be moving on now to share a little bit about the program's themes. Every summer, we hear from students about what topics they really enjoyed and what areas they want to dive a little bit deeper into. So these are the themes, but we are looking to expand and potentially incorporate some tracks so students can take an even deeper dive into some of the more specific topics that are of interest to them. So the first thing we do is we talk about the science of climate change. That includes providing students with this foundational understanding of climate drivers, the greenhouse effect, and then Miriam's lessons will dive a little bit even deeper into understanding our future projections of climate impacts through modeling. In terms of climate impacts, we recognize that there are global impacts as well as more local regional variabilities. And we're going to talk about both because it's really important. We have students coming from all over the world. The climate impacts that they experience in their communities, they vary in type and magnitude. We have an expert that's joining us from the National Center for Disaster Preparedness. So Josh is going to be sharing a lot about preparedness and risk, recovery planning, and mitigation and adaptation approaches. We also have Martin Dietrich Brauch, who's going to be sharing about international climate policies and negotiations. So Martin's going to talk about the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement, the UN climate change negotiations, and global governance and international law. He's also going to be sharing about decarbonization pathways and the energy transition. And I think Ananda mentioned this. We have climate justice threaded through much of our conversations across topics, but we also have a dedicated lesson that will really dive into climate justice because climate change impacts are disproportionately impacting people around the world. So talking about equity and inclusivity when we're talking about the energy transition is very important. We're going to talk about sustainability in the circular economy. So the current consumerism and throwaway culture that we have, how do we move away from that and move towards more circular systems and achieving more sustainable business practices? Climate change communication and conversation is key for students, no matter what their climate action project is going to be, because they're going to need to onboard stakeholders and support. So we're going to give you some techniques of fostering open dialogues around climate issues. We have the opportunity to learn from sustainability practitioners about how they've been able to implement some of these sustainability practices into their work. So students are really going to get that in-depth look about real-world applications to the things that we learn in the classroom. And finally, climate solutions and collective action. That is really wrapped up in our climate action project that every student will complete. We're going to help facilitate students in thinking about all the different steps that need to be taken in building a climate action project and how to ensure that this project is something that can continue long after the program's over. So we have 6 Columbia Climate School experts that will be joining us on campus and leading lessons for the Green Mountains program. Our experts are leaders in a variety of sectors. That includes climate science, social science, sustainability, finance, and policy. We may even have a few additional climate school experts that happen to live in the Burlington area that might join us for a guest appearance. So that will be exciting. But we have Miriam with us today, so I would love to invite Miriam to introduce herself, her background, and some of the lessons that she teaches.
Totally. Hi all, this is my face twice now. My name is Miriam. I am a PhD student at Columbia and NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies. My research is on hydroclimate extremes, so I'm looking at droughts and extreme precipitation and what happens if they happen at the same time or out of sync with each other, and the kind of impacts that they can have, mostly at kind of the global scale, because I mostly use climate models, which are giant supercomputers. And that's one of the courses I will talk about in a second. I think there's another slide, so we don't have to look at my face anymore. Oh, okay. Oh, right. You want me to come back to that later? That's
Yes.
fine. Bye.
We'll dive a little bit deeper into the lessons that Miriam leads in a little bit. But I also wanted to introduce the other 5 experts on the program. So Laurel DeSera will also be joining us. Laurel is a graduate research assistant at the Columbia Climate School, and she really dives into how mosquito-borne diseases are impacted by climate. So she focuses on improving subseasonal to seasonal forecasts and looks at how these models could be used by decision makers to improve the livelihoods of their constituents. And so Laurel co-teaches the Climate Science Primer with Miriam and also teaches the science of climate change. This is Martin Dietrich Brauch. He is the lead researcher at the Columbia Center on Sustainable Investment. He leads economic and legal research, training, and advisory work with a focus on legal and policy frameworks and practices for sustainable investment, with the goal of achieving climate mitigation and adaptation strategies. So these goals include decarbonization and a just transition to net zero emissions and economies and other sustainable development goals. So Martin teaches the Sustainable Development Goals in the Paris Agreement, decarbonization pathways, monitoring and measuring progress, and global governance and international law. This is Josh DiVincenzo. Josh is the Assistant Director of Education and Training at the National Center for Disaster Preparedness. And Josh is also an adjunct assistant professor at the Columbia Climate School. I also should mention that Martin is also a professor at the Columbia Climate School leading the graduate course on mitigation this semester, which is very exciting. So Josh is focused on developing learning experiences associated with FEMA training projects that navigate housing and economic recovery. Josh is going to teach about climate change communication and conversation, which he uses in his work to ensure that folks around the country are going to be prepared for disasters and how to build resilience to them. And he will also be teaching the preparedness tools and strategies lesson. Sandra Goldmark is an Associate Dean of Interdisciplinary Engagement at the Columbia Climate School. She also is the Director of Barnard's Campus Sustainability and Climate Action, and she also is a Professor of Professional Practice in the Theater at Barnard College. So Sandra wears many hats, and she has a really fun background and pathway into climate. So Sandra has always worked in the theater, and she had noticed that in the productions that she had done, there's so much waste created from the set designs and costumes. After every production, it just gets thrown away. And so that really led her into researching about circular economies and how to make systems that are currently linear more circular. So Sandra will be teaching the introduction to circular economy, from linear to circular, and connections to circularity. And I also am educating on the program. So my background's actually in marine science, biology, and sustainable science. And so I'm going to be teaching students climate change in your community. So we're going to be talking a lot about climate impacts. We're going to be talking about the role that young people play in taking climate action and how to break down some of these hurdles so you can make sure that your climate action is something that can be a reality after the program's over. I also will be leading all the field programs, so there's going to be a lot of opportunities for students to go out into the field, collect samples, analyze those samples, gain some tangible skills that they're going to be using in college. And so I will be leading all of those activities as well. So my background, I've been teaching and working with young people for about a decade now. I also teach teachers on how to implement climate into their curriculum, and I also work with professional learners, so how they can take some tangible sustainability and climate knowledge and apply it into their current work. All right, so there are a variety of different learning modalities and activities that we incorporate into the program. This includes a speaker series. We use team building, project-based learning opportunities. We ensure that the groups are small, so we have small learning cohorts so students can engage with the professors as well as with each other. They can debate and kind of deepen that understanding of the lessons they learn in the classroom. We're going to go on excursions, which allow us to connect with practitioners that are using these solutions in the field. As I mentioned, we're going to be going into the field and collecting data and analyzing those samples. And finally, the main deliverable is the Climate Action Project, where students are going to develop a solution or a plan to address a climate challenge that their community faces. They're then going to present these climate action projects at the end of the program to get advice and guidance and next steps from their peers as well as the Columbia experts. We wanted to give you a little sneak peek of some of the program content. So I'm going to invite Miriam back in to share a little bit about the climate science primer. This is I think this is the first lesson that students will get to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Okay, yeah, so much more exciting than introducing myself. The climate science primer, it's one of my favorite lectures to give all year. Its goal is to get everyone up to speed, regardless of how much scientific background you have, on what actually is the Earth's climate, how does that differ from the weather, what goes into making our Earth's climate, how does what happens here even happen. We dabble a little bit into what is climate change, but the other Laurel does a great job in her session talking about that. As it says here, we also look at what climate classification. So how do we say the Northeast has a certain climate versus California, or what are the different climates of Africa and Australia and things like that. We look at how those are defined, what variables go into them. And then of course we look at why climate is so important to us. How does what we see in our atmosphere every day influence how we build buildings, the food that we eat, basically how culture is developed. That's a major section of this class. And finally, we get into how we know what we know about climate. So we have all of this data for hundreds of years, and also data that looks a little different than just numbers that we try to incorporate. How do we know things that happened 800,000 years ago or even longer? And so we try to cover some of those climate proxies, as well as explain fundamentals behind climate change, radiation, and greenhouse gases, which is what that giant orb of nautoscale sun is in the top left picture there. And I also teach a class on climate modeling, which, if all goes to plan, we have some looking under the hood at what actually goes into these massive supercomputers that let us plug in all of the information about the climate today to try to forecast what could happen in the future if we keep burning fossil fuels, which went pretty well last time. So if anyone has any interest in programming, there's a little dabble of that, but I try to make it fun for everyone to follow along, even if they're not super experienced in that space. I think that's everything.
Thanks, Miriam. That sounds great. I did talk to a handful of students and families that were really interested in modeling and how do we work with these large data sets. And so I think this session is going to be really exciting for a lot of students because it really helps us understand the world that we live in. So I'm excited for it. And there is, I don't know if you want to speak to this game. I'll play the video and then you can try and explain the demo that turns into a very competitive game with students.
Totally. So the basic idea behind this game is to embody the radiation that goes on in our atmosphere. That's part of why our planet is nice and comfy warm and getting, unfortunately, more and more warm every day. So as you can see in the picture, you're getting incoming radiation from the sun that gets absorbed on the Earth. And then there's a following side where it gets re-radiated off. And so somewhere in the middle of this video, you'll see something that represents the Earth. And all the students are being photons running from the sun to the Earth. And then they run away, representing the photons bouncing off the Earth and going back to the atmosphere. I don't remember which stage in this is, but you may see greenhouse gases that are tagging the photons as they run away from the Earth. And then that means they're re-radiating back. So it's kind of getting at what actually is happening in the atmosphere to keep things warm. Yeah.
Yes. So these are the last 3 photons, and I think everyone else is a greenhouse gas. So I'll play it. I don't know if they made it out.
Yeah, it gets a little bit, the metaphor of the game kind of falls apart at the end when there's way more greenhouse gases than photons. Fortunately, that is not what our atmosphere is like yet, and should never become.
Thanks, Miriam. So Miriam will stick around for questions. Feel free to put them in the Q&A. I also want to share a little bit about the preparedness tools and strategies session that's led by Josh DiVincenzo. So this is a fast-paced activity that facilitates an understanding of the emergency notification process of a county government during and after the remnants of a major natural, or what we call also a non-natural disaster. So this activity simulates a real-life scenario of a government call center. So they're experiencing these challenges that might really be encountered, but they're also, students are forced to create collaborative and unique solutions to these challenges as well. So I'm going to play the video just so you can see how it flows.
Trust water, drink water, drink water, shoot the water, don't smell water.
So it's a little chaotic. You can hear that we even play a simulation of phone calls because we really wanted it to be a real life simulation for students. And clearly a little hint, there is a disaster that's around water. So in any case, it's a nice collaborative activity for students to think about resilience. The decarbonization pathways lesson is led by Martin. He's going to share about the broad range of policy approaches and technologies that are needed for the rapid reduction of CO2. This is one of the lessons that will also really highlight climate justice or injustice, because emissions from the richest 1% of global populations account for more than twice the combined share of the poorest 50%. So that is really asking the question of who is responsible for taking the most aggressive climate mitigation action and who is responsible for helping countries that are impacted the most to adapt and build against the loss and damages that they've had. So the climate negotiations activity is one that Ananda said was one of her favorites. This is a role-playing game that's premised on an international climate summit. So all student groups, they play the role of delegates representing different countries or negotiating blocks, and in some cases, interest groups. And the goal is for us to stay below 2 degrees C and really to stay below 1.5 degrees C. So it's a really great way for students to understand some of the challenges in international negotiations, and how can you get to yes? How can you get to solutions? So you can see Also a very heated discussion here, but students, in order to really negotiate on behalf of your country, you have to know it inside and out. And so we take quite a bit of time for you to digest that material. And then this is a half-day activity where students really dive in. For the circular economy, this is taught by Sandra Goldberg, and it's presenting some of the core concepts of circular economy. Then we have a group activity where students learn to think critically and strategically implement a project where you're taking either a linear system or a product that ends with waste and think about how to make that circular. So then students are going to present their new circular inventions to the group for input and feedback. This is really great, and this is one of those examples of project-based learning where students are working together. We also lead a variety of field-based activities. This is going to allow students to gain that technical and research-based skills through data collection and analysis. And so while students aren't engaging in their own formal research project, and primarily this is due to time constraints, in 2 weeks we don't have enough time to do a robust research project, they are going to get these unique skills in sampling out into the field. And this is going to be something that they're going to be doing in college. So getting this experience now is great. So you can see we went to a nearby lake and we ran a seine net through the water to do a biological survey that can give us a sense of the water quality. And then we compared the diversity and the species sensitivities of what we caught with some actual water chemistry tests that we did. You can see Ananda up here is doing some water chemistry to then kind of have this correlation between the biodiversity and the chemistry of the area. And while this is giving a snapshot of environmental conditions, when looking at conditions like this over a period of 30 or more years, we can really start to see some climate trends. We also surveyed macroinvertebrates, which are tiny water bugs, to assess water quality in a stream. These tiny bugs, like a damselfly or dragonfly that you know as flying insects, they actually start their life in water. And so when they're in this water state, they have different tolerances of pollution and water quality. So if we find the most sensitive species and a great diversity of macroinvertebrates, then we can come to a conclusion that the water quality is pretty good in this creek. So this is actually a protocol that's used all across the US because it doesn't require any chemicals, and it's pretty simple to do in terms of equipment, and it's one of the least invasive ways to measure in an environment. So we're going to be doing that as well. And then we're going to be taking some tree rings because tree rings know a lot about past climate, and they hold that information in the tree rings that they have. So we have worked with a group at Vermont Doherty Earth Observatory of Columbia Climate School to use the same methodology to extract a tree core to look at the rings, and that can tell us a lot about the precipitation and temperature from the past. We're also going to go to the Darren Freshwater Institute at Lake George. This was one of Ananda's favorite activities, as she mentioned. So this is a way for us to hear and learn from other experts that are studying climate on a local level. Students are going to engage in virtual reality sessions to learn about the importance of phytoplankton. We're going to do a teaching lab about the various invasive and native species in the lake and how they're impacted by climate. And climate change, and we're going to learn about the power of remote operative vehicles underwater and in the air, aka drones, that can be used as tools to assess ecosystem conditions. We also take an all-day excursion to Burlington, and this is a great opportunity for students to learn from sector experts about how they're implementing sustainability into their work. Burlington was one of the first cities to source 100% of its electricity from renewable sources. So it's a really great opportunity for us to learn about some of the advances that have been made in this city. And then we're going to explore all that Vermont has to offer. It is one of the most beautiful places you can be in the summertime. So we're going to go hiking, berry picking. We may meet some alpacas. We might go to a sustainable farm. roast s'mores by the bonfire. It's just a really wonderful opportunity to make friends with students from across the country and the world and have fun. And then, as we mentioned, the final deliverable is our climate action project. So each student creates their own climate action project that is going to address the challenge in their community, and every project really varies. They then share their projects at the end of the program, and we conclude with a keynote speech from Governor Peter Shumlin, who joins us on the last day of the program to share about his work in politics. All right, now I'm going to pass it off to Sylvie, who's going to share a little bit more about applications and eligibility.
Thanks, Laurel. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. So my name is Sylvie. I work here at Putney Student Travel. I work with Laurel to put together the logistics of this program. So to apply for the Columbia in the Green Mountains program, you can visit our website and follow the link there to fill out an application. Students who are completing 9th through 12th grade are eligible. And as Laurel mentioned earlier, we consider motivated rising 9th graders as well. Your application is considered through a selective application process with rolling admission, where you're asked to submit a statement of interest. We want you to tell us why you're interested in the program, as well as 2 teacher references. You will be asked to complete an agreement form and to hold space on the program by submitting a $700 deposit. This is comprised of a $200 application fee and a $500 deposit towards tuition. We ask you to please reach out to us if you have any questions during this process. We're here to help and happy to. In addition to this, we're really excited to offer full and partial need-based scholarships to attend the program for students residing in the US. So to apply for the scholarship program, students should meet the general admission eligibility requirements that I just mentioned, but the application is on a separate page of our website. It asks for 2 responses, short responses similar to the application statement, as well as 2 teacher references and financial information for your household. There's very detailed descriptions on what is required for that, but again, please reach out to us if you have any questions about the scholarship application process. Scholarship applications are due on March 15th of this year, so we still have plenty of time. Please reach out to us if you do have any questions. We'd love to talk to you. Great. I think we'll turn it back over to Laurel for questions.
Thanks, Sylvie. Yes, thank you so much for everyone as well for joining us for the past hour and so to learn about this program. We really would love to answer all your questions at this time, so feel free to use the Q&A to ask questions to myself or Sylvie about the program, or Ananda about the student experience, or Miriam about her background and work in climate modeling. We do have a question here. Someone's asking, can you tell us how big the program is and the ages of the students in the program? So our program ranges. It can be anywhere from 60 to 80 students. And that being said, that is a large group of students that will join us in the program, but we really focus on small learning cohorts. So all students are broken up into small groups called biomes. So we'll have a wetland biome, a desert biome, and they will all move through the program by attending all the same lectures and activities, but it's just a nice opportunity for them to have small group discussions and network with the experts as well. In terms of the ages, every year we do have a few rising seniors. So I actually feel like rising seniors is a very popular age group that attends the program. But we do, as we mentioned, accept students from 9th through 12th grade. So there will be a mix. And within those biomes, we also ensure a mix of ages as well as students from where they're coming from. Because one of the most incredible things of the program is really that they share their experiences, and students from all different backgrounds have different lived experiences that really build upon the discussions and make the classes really, really rich. Sylvie, did you want to add anything there too?
No, I think that's great. I think it's absolutely true that specifically rising seniors and rising juniors are probably the biggest cohort of students on the program, but there is a pretty big diversity in terms of ages and where students are coming from on the program. I can hop onto this next question as well. We just got a question about when the application deadline for the program is. So for the general application for the program, there actually is no specific deadline before the start of the program itself. We consider applications on a rolling basis. So as soon as you submit, we're looking at your materials, reaching out if we need anything, and letting you know in a pretty quick timeline. That being said, for the scholarship application, we do have an application deadline of March 15th. That allows us to process applications and make sure that preparation is fully supported for the program and in the few months that we have leading up to the program. So March 15th for the scholarship application, rolling admissions for general applications.
Thanks, Sylvie. We're open to taking any other questions, especially since we have our guest speakers here. They would be happy to share a little bit more of life in the Green Mountains on this program. So while we're waiting for a few more questions, maybe I'll just share a little bit more about our pre-college program and what makes us really unique. So I think the Columbia Climate School pre-college program can differ from other programs in that we are inviting our Columbia Climate School experts who are faculty and staff and researchers that are going to be directly teaching on this program. So we don't hire any adjuncts, which means that students are really going to hear about some of the cutting edge work that's being done at the university and at our school. That being said, we do value the work of practitioners. So having the ability to not just network and meet with Columbia folks, but also meeting people that are working in the field that can really help guide students in their own career paths, I think is just a really incredible and unique opportunity on the program. Okay, we have a few other questions here. So someone asked, classroom versus fieldwork, what is the time devoted to each? Every day looks very different, so it's hard to say. I would say that we really, really value hands-on learning, place-based learning, and field-based learning as our core of this whole program. Students will have some lectures, which will kind of give them that pre-college, that college experience, but they're not going to be sitting in lectures all day. We want students outside. We want students debating and discussing with each other. We're going to take excursions for students to learn out into the field. So I would say it leans more towards out into the field over classrooms. But yes, we will be, it is a pre-college program. So we want students to be prepared for the college experience as well as high schoolers. Oh, Sylvie, do you want to take the question about the application?
Yeah, absolutely. So I see a question here mentioning the option to submit a video instead of a written essay as part of the application process. I just want to clarify here that this is referring to the scholarship application. For the general admissions application, we do ask for a written statement. For the scholarship application, one of the two submissions is available in video format. There isn't a set time limit for the length of the video. We want you to be creative and use as much as you need to communicate with us. That being said, we do want to make sure that the file itself is uploadable. So I would say that in itself is your limit. If you have trouble uploading the file, then you can reach out to us and we can support you in that. But yeah, so just to be clear, that is an option on the scholarship application and not on the general admissions. Yeah.
Fantastic. And then we have a question about the Climate Action Project. So the question is, are you able to research something that has not been talked about specifically during the program? Absolutely. If you come in with an idea already on what type of action you want to take in your community or what action you want to take elsewhere, and you want to refine that idea on the program, you're more than welcome to do it. I mean, in 2 weeks, there is so much to talk about when it comes to climate. There are so many intersections. Sylvie and I were just talking. I mean, people dedicate their whole lives to studying this from high school, undergrad, graduate, and PhD programs. So we're not going to be able to touch on everything, but we want to give students enough of a foundation, enough of knowledge and skills so they do feel empowered to take that into whatever project they want. So absolutely, you can choose a topic that isn't something that we've touched on, but I do feel like the skills that you're going to be learning from this program are going to help you build that out. Fantastic. Well, I don't see any other questions, and we are just about at time. So I wanted to thank everyone for joining us and asking such amazing questions. This has been really great. If you have any other questions, our emails are up on the screen, and we'd be happy to answer them via email or by phone. And we hope to see you in the Green Mountains this summer. Thanks, everyone.